Today we're going to talk about Elvis Presley. Elvis the pelvis. This is the bumpiest part of this drive, I'm sure. Okay, this is Gower going up. I'm looking right at the Hollywood sign right here. Last night I watched a thing on Netflix on Elvis, and I was putting it off. I had seen it there. It was on the 68 comeback special. Elvis looked like a god at the 68 comeback special. I knew a lot about Elvis. I've watched pretty much everything anything I could find on Elvis. And Elvis movies, all of it. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. And the reason is because I was brought up on Elvis. I mean, Elvis music was in my house all the time. Elvis and Dolly Parton were two big ones my mom loved, you know. My dad was a Mario Lanza fan, which is interesting because I learned last night that Elvis was a Mario Lanza fan, and we'll get into that. And as a child, my mother would comb my hair in a pompadour. There's pictures of me with that pompadour. She put dippity-doo was a thing, which would like freeze your hair like a helmet. So on picture days, that was the day. My mom would comb my hair in a pompadour, and she'd put me in embarrassing Elvis costumes, really. I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but they were horrible. With a vest, with a belt, and it was way over the top. And I remember those picture days because I would sit in class all day cracking my hair. I remember that, just cracking my hair with my fingers because it was solid. It made an audible snapping sound. And the thing is like, as a kid, when we had company over, that was my job, was to entertain company, and the way that we would do that is my mother put Elvis on, and I would mimic Elvis, and I would do all the moves and sing all the Elvis songs. Yeah, if you've been around me long enough, and if you ever, I haven't done this in a while, but it was pretty common for me when I was young. I would serenade you with Elvis songs, especially if I was trying to date you or something, or if I was around a fire, drunk, really happy. Yeah. Love me tender, love me true, never let me go. It's good. It's fun stuff, man. I love me some Elvis. I'm such a big Elvis fan. I drove across country once. I did it all, man. I did the Graceland trip. I got a picture of me on the front porch of the shotgun shack that Elvis Presley was born and raised in. Yeah, huh? That was probably around the year 2000. 24 years ago, that was me. That was a crazy trip. That's a whole other story. That could be one of the one that got away stories. Anyhow, I watched this thing last night, and Elvis's journey is really interesting because, first of all, I'm a huge fan of early Elvis, dirty hillbilly Elvis Presley. And if you listen to those recordings, they're awesome. He was doing the Chitlin circuit back then, I always thought a good idea for a film would be that time period. I think there's a bit of that in Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash film. I think it'd be really, really cool if they would just do a series, 8-part series on Netflix. Netflix, you listening? On that, Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins and all those guys, but also all the black artists whose music they were kind of inspired by, that changed the world, changed the country. Because if it wasn't for those dudes who were brought up in the South, being exposed to black music and juke joints and all that, the rock and roll would not have, it would have been there, but it would have been a longer time coming. At any rate, he gets discovered while he's doing all the touring of the South there by Colonel Parker. Colonel Parker sees him as this object to make money. And, He's a Svengali with Elvis and convinces him, you go with me, kid, I'll put you in movies and everything else. And Elvis goes for it. And he was good for Elvis in the beginning. He got him on television, all of it. And the problem was that Colonel Parker didn't care about Elvis's true self and what he loved doing, which was just bop 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 bop, bam. It was Elvis, man. And his buddies, he just wanted to jam and sing. And the thing that you can, and we're going to get into this, but you can goof on Elvis all you want when it comes to the poor movie choices and everything, but he didn't have a choice. He signed a contract, and he had to make, so he made a couple movies. He was real big. Parker was really smart. He had him record a bunch of stuff before he went in the Army. You have to understand, I think, they didn't get into it, but I think that Elvis getting drafted might have been a thing that was done on purpose to a certain extent, because Elvis took the country by storm, and parents weren't happy about it because Elvis the pelvis. He couldn't control his legs. The dancing became part of it, but even early on, just the way he moved, that's just his thing, man. He could not move. You bring me to a blues bar, rhythm and blues, something like that, my body starts moving. I can't control it, man. I get possessed by the music. And that's exactly how Elvis was. And again, he sang in a black way, in a black manner. And that was a problem at that time, because black music wasn't even allowed on. If you were black, you weren't even being played on the radio. And you got to get into Little Richard and which is even, and Chuck Berry, and but the blues guys, Muddy Waters and all this good stuff. If you did a like a Netflix series, let's say, I think you start with that, like the beginnings of music, of the blues, and then with the black artists and what was happening in these juke joints on the outskirts of these towns, and then you get these little white kids coming in there and paying attention, and through gospel and church. And these were poor kids. All these guys came, they were poor. And that was the music that they grew up around, and they loved it. And then when they got older, they started doing it. And then, boom, it caught on. And Elvis goes in the Army for a couple of years, but during that time, Colonel Parker was releasing records. So he was never out of the limelight. And when he came out, Before he went in, he did a couple movies. When he came out, he did Blue Hawaii. And when he did Blue Hawaii, it was, come on, people, you're a bunch of morons. Before he did, he did Blue Hawaii when he got out of the Army, merging onto the highway in L.A. I know how to do it, but nobody else seems to. This is crazy. So, let me move over in traffic. So he does Blue Hawaii, and the thing that happens with Blue Hawaii is the soundtrack tops the charts for something like 20 weeks, and that was it. Colonel Parker created the formula after that. We're going to make movies, and we're going to do a soundtrack. That soundtrack's going to get in the charts, and the movie's going to promote the film, and the film's going to the film is going to promote the record. The record's going to promote the film. And it was gold. They're making money. Next thing you know, Elvis gets signed to this contract. But then they just these movies are getting progressively worse. And it's killing Elvis inside. It's killing him. He did not want to do that. That is not what he signed up for. But he was locked in with a contract, and he had to do it. And he tried to fight it. And that's why Elvis got this bad rap, And then Elvis stood up for himself, and he said, screw it, I'm going to do gospel records. And if you've never heard Elvis sing gospel, you don't have to be, a major church-going person to appreciate it. That's where, if you hadn't already learned and heard, excuse me, the raw talent that Elvis possessed, you will be exposed to it via listening to Elvis singing gospel. And that's what you can tell, that's what kind of inspired him again. You know, that's what gave him a little bit of juice. And, you know, he did his last movie, it was garbage. I mean, they showed where they literally had him on the back of a hay rod, like a truck with chickens in it, singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm. It was pretty bad, soul crushing. And then we get to the 68 special where Elvis is, you know, what it was they were doing a Colonel Parker thing. And apparently, in between the shooting, Elvis would go in his room with his bros and just jam. And the producers of the show went and saw that, and they wanted to put that on the special. And there was a battle between them and Parker. And it is really weird because you get this feeling that Colonel Parker was like, he just wanted the money, but it was almost as if he was actively trying to prevent Elvis from being his true self. Like he was getting in the way of it. And that's sinister in a way. It's just so sad because we never got to see the true Elvis until, I mean, the early stuff, obviously, but most people didn't actually see that. It's so crazy. Priscilla, his wife, you get that whole story in the Netflix show as well, but you learn that Priscilla had never seen Elvis perform in front of people until the 68 comeback special. That's insane. That's insane. That's when she finally got it. Wild, man. Wild. And, you know, it was so much fun to watch. And then at the end, I got emotional because it turns out, like, Elvis, after the 68 comeback special, Elvis would never perform other than live. And he did another 1,141 live performances before his death in 1977, which was crushing. It was crushing for me as a kid, you know, 11 years old. It was the year my sister was born, too. And you see the writing on the screen, you know. He did another 1,141 live performances before he died in 1977. And he was 42 years old. And he died on the toilet, you know, addicted to doctor-prescribed prescription drugs. It's like the world, like people got around him and then took advantage and warped it. I mean, he made money and everything, but he couldn't be his true self. He was shackled by producers and Colonel Parker and contracts that stifled his true self, his soul. And even still, we got it. You know, like it was held back from us, but we got it. But we were still ripped off. We were gypped, and Elvis was ripped off and gypped. We never got, imagine if we could have gotten what was in the 68 comeback special, if that's what his whole career would have been, was him just being his true self all the time. I'm just going to leave you with that. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I just did the Elvis video, and I came over to Kirgy's house to talk about some work, and she had this jacket. This is my jacket. I bought this is a very rare Billy Bob Thornton, designed by Angelique Jolie in the late 90s. It might be the only one that exists. It doesn't get more Elvis than this. How cool is this, man? Gabardine, the real deal. Look at the white pipe, little stitching on here, but it's got a modern thing. It's got the zipper. It's got padded shoulders, which I don't need. I don't need the padded shoulders. But I wanted to show you the label on this thing. And that's it. You guys have a great day.